Sonya and Sacha, for real.
You're listening to Brimbank Live on Live FM. This is a Sonya and Sacha for real show, and we have an absolute treat. It's been a very political show today, hasn't it, Sacha? Because we've been talking politics with our friend Sheba. We've had the quiz at the start of the show where I quizzed you about Biden and the other bloke.
And I have still no idea.
And now we thought we'd do something a little bit different and we'd get a young person's point of view, because you and I are 23 and a half, so that's getting a bit old. So I think we need to get a young person's point of view. And I happened to meet this amazing young man the other day when I was invited to I didn't have to stalk this guest.
Did you go to a Zoom party?
Unheard of. I was invited to a Zoom party. I love it, from some students that I'd spoken to a year ago. And they invited me to a Zoom party. And then I said to this lovely gentleman, "What do you study?" And he said, "International politics." And I was like, right, you need to come on to the Sonya and Sacha for real show and tell us all about your politics. So can everyone please go crazy for Marcus Napolitano? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Marcus. First, we love your name. Love your name.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hope you're all doing well.
And the fact that you're studying international politics in Australia
scares me. Don't know anything about it.
And there is never a better time in history that you could study something, because not only are you studying it, but you're learning it and thinking it and breathing it every single day with what's going on in Australia.
Yep.
I know, it's such a diverse subject, and as you said, like, you are living and breathing it daily. Like, you don't even have to go to a tutorial to learn this subject. You are literally in it day and night, sleeping or alive. You are there.
You don't need to do a class. You just watch the Dan Andrews little things on Sunday morning, and you go, "My tutorial is done."
Do you know what I love? I've been watching the memes on social media, and they've got a history of 2020, and the volume is like, thousands and thousands of pages that you have to study when you get to university. Poor history students studying 20 when we get down the track a little bit. A bit happened. We had a bit on that year. Bit on.
Yeah, bit going on. Now tell us.
A bit on. Yeah, that's right.
Get into politics and want to study it.
Well, I know this is going to probably sound a bit weird, but
nothing's weird. It's 2020,
really
Marcus.
I was actually a bit intrigued by the leadership spills in the Labor Party between Gillard, Rudd, that really got me involved into wanting to understand a bit more about our political system. Yeah. And I just couldn't come to understand how our Prime Minister changed. It seemed like on a daily occurrence back then, but and even back with the Liberal Party, on how that changed consistently. And so that really made me interested to get to know politics, get to know what I'm living in, who governs me and who has control over me, as a way of just going about life and getting to know why I'm like, what is leading me around the world to do the things that I am. Well, it's the government, and who are the politicians, and that's politics for you.
Wow. And you've certainly lived. How old are you, Marcus?
I'm 18.
Okay, so you've certainly lived a very unique time in history of Australian politics, with the like, it's almost like from right when you would have probably been able to understand it, you would have been changing prime ministers, and it's been such a big topic. Whereas for years before that, we had one prime minister for years and it never even changed. So certainly it's been something different for you. Tell us, what do you think about what's going on with American politics right now? I mean, that's another crazy thing.
I know. American politics is just so different here to Australian politics. And you think Australian politics is really, really, really bad. Well, just take a look at America. That is a completely different story. I think when you have to consider a politics in America right now, you have to consider the pandemic. This is a country that is on the brink of collapse. They are fighting for their lives, and it has to happen within a presidential election year. And the discourse between politics there compared to Australia, whereby we don't have a businessman running to be our prime minister. There you can be a businessman or a singer and Kim Kardashian's husband. What I'm trying to get at is really doesn't matter who you are there. You can become the president of the United States. Here, we're more ingrained in having some sort of a political background in that. But there, it's just completely different in the way that they're going about their political arena and the discourse that goes about that. We think that we're bad here in the way that we insult each other, Labor, Liberal, Greens, etc. There, it's actually that what they're trying to do is they're trying to find something against you that you would have done way back when you were a teenager, and they're trying to put it against you and label you as whatever it may be. So it's really, really, really controversial there compared to what it is here.
But it seems like that Trump can get away with anything. Like he has a list of long things that he's done back in the day, and it's kind of like he has rules for him versus other people. They've said one particular thing back when they were 20, and now they're completely labeling it with him, whereas he seems to be able to get away with a lot more. That's just what I've been able to see. What do you think about that?
I do. I think, he is able to get around a lot of things and not be that accountable and transparent. And it's probably because of the system and how it's run there. They do have a separation of powers. They have the Congress, they have the judiciary, but here, our Prime Minister is also a member of Parliament, and you've got to understand that. So they're constantly accountable to the Parliament, and that's where all members of that represent us in electorates sit and so forth of that nature. And he's accountable. He has to do question time every single day that the Parliament sits. The president doesn't have to do that. He can veto any bill that he wants. He can basically put down an executive order like building a wall using military funds at his discretion. So what it goes to show is the role of the president, head of government and head of state, is completely different to something like here where your prime minister is just the head of government. And yes, with that, you can get away with a lot because the president, he's the commander in chief, he's the head of the American army, he's the head of America. You're going to be able to get away with a lot.
So because I think probably this is a personal thing because I tend to just not really understand the whole system, but so I'm looking for the comedy in politics, and I think in Australian media, a lot of the media outlets go for that. They show us the funniest, stupidest, craziest, parts of these candidates. But what do you think of both, people? Do they have some decent policies behind them? What do you think about Biden, and then what do you think about Trump?
I think Biden is someone that has had 40 years experience or greater in politics. So he's very knowledgeable, and he has some really good policies, progressive policies as well, but also liberal policies. And they not only address centrally the economy, but they address other issues such as climate change, race divisions, and foreign affairs and trade and so forth of that nature. Trump is basically centered around the economy, and that's where his policies lie, central to the economy. So in an American sort of sphere, the economy means everything because the economy means power, and it means maintaining that superpower status. So Trump, as a businessman, is taking his businessman knowledge in blatant terms and putting it into a political scene, which seems really, really, really strange. But the economy in America somewhat did improve from Trump. Employment did rise, but it all came crushing down just at the start of this year. So I reckon in regards to Biden, his policies are more broad, but Trump is centered in the economy with his policies. And that's all.
Do you think a businessman can run a country like properly? When they say business, if he can run successful businesses, obviously he's made some money. He's had that you can put those same values to run a country.
I don't think you can, because a country isn't centered around the economy. I think we've come to learn that during the coronavirus pandemic. You need to address the health issue before you address the economic issue. So there's so many different aspects to the sovereignty and to the composition of a country, foreign affairs, trade, the domestic economy, health, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think you can be a businessman and know what, how to cure coronavirus and so forth of that nature. Being a politician is an occupation whereby you're able to obtain advice from every single source and knowledgeable area and be able to have the courage to make that decision. A businessman is going to make a decision based on what's good for them in an economic sense. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you can necessarily run a country and be a businessman and run it correctly, if that sort of makes sense.
Mm.
Or have empathy for any of those other really important things like education and health and, senior, citizens and all of those things that, take compassion and empathy and understanding, to
that's right. Yeah.
A sense of even being seen by the, the president and being understood on any kind of level. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? So what do you think now, Marcus? Do you think that young people are more aware of politics, and do you think that they're more into it now than before? Because I've got to say, I've not really had any conversations with young people about politics, and certainly no one as knowledgeable as you about the whole deal. And
look, what I think with that is, I think youth of our current generation is centered upon taking politics on singular issues. So you're going to have that individual that is an activist for climate change. You're going to have that individual that is an activist for Black Lives Matter. You're going to have probably an individual that is centered upon those true things, for example. But as I've said, politics is more broad than that, and you've got to take into consideration all different things. So with the issue of climate change, it's very complicated, and I don't think you can just say, right, we've got to reduce zero net emissions straight away. No, well, why don't you have a strategy, for a sense, to slowly reduce emissions? Perhaps that's a way of going forward. It's so diverse and complicated. So I don't think the youth of our current day necessarily know politics fully, because they're so concentrated on singular issues that you need to take in a broad amount of understandings into different areas in saying, well, if you're going to tackle this singular issue, how's it going to affect the other features? If you tackle climate change, is it going to affect health? Is it going to affect education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So I think I would like to see the youth of our current age sort of a bit more broadly focusing from one singular issues to other issues as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally does.
Yeah, I'm so fascinated with you, Marcus. I think I could talk to you for hours, because I love that you've got this really knowledgeable way of looking at politics, but also having such a fresh mind with it as well. Having and being able to see all points of view, and also it's almost like I can feel the vibe that you really actually care about the country and care about the world, and it's not just about the money, and it's not just about that, but how are all these people's decisions going to really affect us? How do you think the American election is actually going to affect Australia?
Well, I think the American election is going to affect us greatly, both domestically, in a domestic sense, and in a foreign sense. You've got to understand Australia is in a position, yes, we're an island by itself, not connected, but we are in an area known as the Asia Pacific region, whereby we have to choose right now whether we're going to stick with China or where we're going to go with America. And so America is pushing us so much to get on its side and to be its sort of gopher in the area, in tackling China, to ensure that the Asia Pacific region, and especially areas such as the South China Sea and so forth, are American centralized and are liberal democratically protected. So it's going to have a massive impact on the way that we see our political sphere, both domestically and internationally here in Australia, because Scott Morrison is great mates and buddies with Trump over there. If Biden gets in, well, ScoMo's going to have to change his tune a bit. I don't think you've ever seen an Australian Prime Minister attack an American president. And the reason for that is we fear them. We are their gophers. We're their little minions. So you're going to have to adapt to any sort of American president, whether it be Trump or Biden, because we rely on them as our protector. They rely on us as their gopher in the region. So it's going to greatly change our dynamic here in the way that we see politics, how we're going to address issues such as climate change and the coronavirus and this global recession that we're facing at the moment. And the decisions that an American president makes are decisions that are going to affect Australia. There's no doubt about that.
Do you know what I feel like when you're explaining that? I feel like, in primary school when everyone picks on this one kid, not me personally, but everyone picks on this one kid, or you gang up on somebody, and then your little friend that you've got that you gang up on everyone, all of a sudden they have a day off and you have to suck up the other people, right, just to play with someone, right? That's what ScoMo's going to have to do. He's like, he's been going hardcore Biden, and if Biden wins, he's going to have to go up to him and go, so do you want to be my friend now? You know what I mean? Do you want to play? Because we're in this thing together now. I know all of that other stuff we said. I'm really sorry about that. But will you play with me? And as much as we want to have a bit of a laugh at it, it's actually that, you have to put your tail between your legs and go, I better make friends with this guy now because I haven't got anyone else to play with,
That's a true assessment, Sacha.
It is, isn't it?
Do you think Biden will get in, Marcus?
Look, I think if we take into consideration the impact of this pandemic at the moment, this has changed everything. I would have probably said that Trump would have had a chance if this coronavirus pandemic didn't happen in America, but it has obliterated that country. They're about to enter into their winter, so their second wave is going to be, well, I don't even know if they've even finished their first wave, but
it's just the wave. It's a tsunami.
The
tsunami that just keeps going.
But I think Biden does have a good chance. But again, that goes to the thing. We didn't think that Trump was going to get in 2016. The polls showed that Hillary Clinton was going to get in. She got the popular vote. She got 3 million more votes than Trump. And yet Trump got more electoral college votes and became president of the United States. So I think you got to really look at not the percentage and the amount of support for Biden that you constantly see on social media, which is great. You got to take a look at the electoral college because that's the main thing. Is he going to have enough electoral college votes in order to secure the presidency? And that's the really concerning thing. But I do think in this pandemic time, he might just scrape over.
I've watched heaps of documentaries on how they do this voting and how they work it out, and I still don't get it. Like, I just don't get it. How can you have more votes and not win? And I've watched heaps of stuff to educate myself, but it's just like I go, I don't get it. You, Sonya and I've both watched stuff and I come out going, I don't know. I don't understand.
It's so confusing. It's really confusing.
And then, you add in things like the Cambridge Analytica, social media persuasion and all of that sort of thing from the last election, and that's not around anymore. It's just so interesting, isn't it? For someone who is apolitical, the right way of saying I don't care about it. I don't really understand what I'm talking about. But
hey, that's a good one. Apolitical.
This is a fascinating time. And Marcus, I don't think I've ever had politics explained so brilliantly and so in such a cool way. I'm gonna go away now and find out what an electoral college is, and I want to find out. I'm in the South Pacific region. I'm on it now. I'm excited about politics, and if you can do that, then you're a champion, Marcus Napolitano.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I just say, the minute I see ScoMo suck up to Biden, I'm just going to be thinking about you. I love the way we're like whipping these names out. ScoMo and Biden, ScoMo and Trump.
Thank you so much.
You're an absolute delight.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
We're at the end of the show, Sacha. I can't believe we've just had the best politics today. Have you learned?
Yes. I've learned so much.
Yeah, so have I.
It'll go out my head by tomorrow morning. Don't ask me any questions or quiz me on it.
We'll have some good discussions about this tomorrow. So we had the lovely Sheba Simpson on today. Thank you so much, Sheba. We've had the incredible Marcus Napolitano, a young person who's studying international politics, who just is just brilliant at describing what's going on in the world. And how smart is this young man? Like if our Australian politics are in the hands of young people like that, then I'm cool with that.
Yes, I was thinking that too. I completely agree.
Yeah,
That's
so
what you want the future to be in
we've
politics.
got a big show next week, which we will tell you all about on our social media during the week. Have a great week, Sash.
Can't wait to see you. I think I might actually get to see you.
I know we can actually maybe hug.
I know.
Socially
We will.
distant
Sneaky hug.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to glove up.
Glove
Anyway,
up.
have the best week, everybody. We'll see you next week. Sonya and Sacha, Brimbank Live on Live FM.
Sonya and Sacha, for real.